Imagine a ship sailing out into the ocean with 100 crew on board, then suddenly something unexpected happens. The ship reappears a few days later, but it is empty and no one has ever seen the people again. Today, we shed light on the 10 most mysterious ghost ships and shipwrecks. From the mysterious disappearance of the crew of the Mary Celeste to the mystery of the Flying Dutchman, we delve into the most dramatic accidents on the high seas. 1. Flying Dutchman. Eternal on the world's oceans? The legend of the Flying Dutchman sounds almost too crazy to be true. The legend surrounding the ghost ship is one of the most famous sailing legends on Earth. According to the legend, the Flying Dutchman is a ghost ship that is doomed to sail the seas forever. The origins lie in the 17th century. Back then, a captain named Van der Decken sailed around the Cape of Good Hope. This was no easy feat, and the captain foolishly pronounced a curse on board his ship. Cursing is considered a no-no on the high seas because it can stir up evil sea spirits quite quickly. In the case of the Flying Dutchman, the bad saying also had its revenge, as Captain Van der Decken and his crew were condemned to remain at sea forever from that point on. Since then, the Flying Dutchman is said to occasionally appear on the seas of this world and then disappear again. Dozens of ship crews have already sighted the ghost ship. The stories are similar. The crews always report a profound four-master that appears out of nowhere, sails silently past, and then disappears again. Some of the eyewitnesses see a crew on board going about their sailing business. Others report seeing sailors waving, and others claim to have seen Captain Van der Decken and his men shouting for help. But anyone trying to catch up with the Flying Dutchman will soon see the ship disappear. 2. Lost in the pack ice. SS Bimo. The story of the SS Bimo, which became trapped in the drift ice of Alaska in 1931, is particularly eerie. The then 10-year-old modern steel ship of the Hudson Bay Company was on a long voyage through the Bering Strait. In October, the crew was surprised by the sudden freezing of the ice and became trapped. The crew temporarily abandoned the ship to seek shelter nearby, and when they returned, the ship had disappeared. It was almost as if the ship had been magically freed from the ice and abducted. But who managed to free a steel ship weighing several tons from thick ice? Astonishingly, the Bimo was reportedly spotted drifting in the world's oceans without a crew for several decades afterwards, most recently in 1969. The final fate of the SS Bimo remains unknown, making it one of the most legendary ghost ships of our time. 3. Tied up in bed on the RMS Rinn. Can you imagine one of the biggest shipwrecks of the 19th century occurring because the passengers were tied to their beds? The Rinn, a British passenger ship of the Royal Mail Line, which was put into service in 1865, was caught in the San Narciso hurricane on October 29, 1867, and sank near the British Virgin Islands. Over 147 people were on board, and only the 23 crew members survived. Tragically, the passengers drowned as they were tied to their beds in accordance with the customs of the time to prevent them from falling out during the storm. The 94.5-meter-long wreck of the Rinn is now a spooky but also very popular diving destination. The Rinn was one of the first ships to be built entirely of iron and could be propelled by both a steam engine and sail power. The Rinn was on its way from England to Central and South America when it sank, and the passengers were mainly merchants and some very wealthy guests on vacation. 4. Where was the crew of the SV Caz 2? You might think that ghost ships are legends of the past, but that is not true. The SV Caz 2 is one of the most modern ghost ships. On April 15, 2007, the 9.8-meter-long catamaran left Airlie Beach to sail to Townsville. 5 days later, the catamaran drifted lonely and abandoned off the coast of Australia. The three-man crew, consisting of Derek Batten, Peter Tunstead, and James Tunstead, remained missing. Everything on board was normal. A laptop was still switched on when the rescue workers came on board. The engine was running and all emergency systems were intact. Only a torn sail and the absence of a life raft provided clues to a story whose meaning no one has yet understood. The forensic investigation revealed no signs of violence or third-party involvement. The GPS data showed that the ship was drifting in rough seas on the day of departure. A video recording of the crew provided evidence of their last day, but showed no anomalies. Despite extensive search and rescue operations, the men remained unaccounted for. 5. Did the Oang Mun really exist? Let's travel to Asia. People there also know legends of ghost ships and very real shipwrecks. The story of the Oang Mun is one of the most mysterious and controversial maritime stories of the past century. According to reports, the ship was found drifting in the Indian Ocean or the Straits of Malacca in the late 1940s. The entire crew was dead, and no one could explain how it had happened. Legend has it that all the bodies were found with horrified expressions on their faces, but no visible injuries. Shortly after the bodies were discovered, the ship is said to have exploded and sunk under mysterious circumstances. The exact details, and even the existence of the Oang Mun, are still disputed today, and some believe the story is to be pure sailor's yarn. 6. All clear on the Andrea Dor? Who hasn't heard Udo Lindenberg's famous song, Alles klar auf der Andrea Dor, and the saying that developed from it? No, not everything was clear on this ship, because on July 25, 1956, it collided with the Swedish ship Stockholm off the coast of Nantucket. Despite her advanced safety features such as a doubled-wall hull and modern radar system, the large passenger ship developed a severe list after the collision, rendering half of the lifeboats unusable. Somehow this accident reminded me a little of the Titanic, and the Andrea Dor was also on a transatlantic liner service. However, the people on board this ship were much luckier, as other ships in the vicinity reacted very quickly and enabled 1,660 people to be rescued. Nevertheless, 46 people lost their lives in this accident. The next morning, the ship capsized and sank completely in the North Atlantic. The sinking of the Andrea Dor attracted a great deal of media attention and resulted in numerous court cases. The accident heralded the definitive end of passenger shipping on the transatlantic route, and since the 1960s, the connection between Europe and North America has been made by air and airplane. 7. Victim of a bomber, SS Thistlegorm. The next truly ghostly ship is the SS Thistlegorm, a British cargo ship that met a tragic end during the Second World War. Launched in 1940 in Sunderland, northern England, this warship was equipped with powerful anti-aircraft guns and machine guns. On its last voyage in 1941, the Thistlegorm transported weapons and equipment for the British 8th Army across the Red Sea as part of a convoy. On October 6, 1941, the Thistlegorm was attacked and sunk by a German bomber. The attack caused the load ammunition to explode immediately, and the Thistlegorm sank in a massive conflagration along with 9 crew members. Other sailors and officers were picked up and rescued by other ships in the convoy. Tanks, trucks, motorcycles, and an entire railroad carriage sank into the sea with the Thistlegorm. In 1956, ocean explorer Jacques-Yves Cousteau tracked down the wreck for the first time, and since 1991, the location of the ship has been widely known and a popular diving destination in the Red Sea. The main part of the Thistlegorm lies at a depth of only 30 meters, and the numerous motorcycles and trucks are scattered around the wreck. 8. Valencia Disaster in Pacific Northwest. Can you imagine a passenger ship wrecking in such bad weather that even dozens of lifeboats and other ships had no chance of rescuing the passengers? The more than 100 people drowned in front of the rescuers in heavy seas off Vancouver. The Valencia was launched in 1882 and sailed along the Canadian and American Pacific coast as a ship of the Pacific Coast Steamship Company. On January 22, 1906, in heavy seas and strong winds off Vancouver Island, she missed the entrance of the Juan de Fuca Strait and crashed into a reef. According to the official investigation report, 136 people lost their lives, including all the women and children on board. Only 37 people survived, and strangely enough, they were all men. The investigation report found that errors in the ship's navigation and bad weather had led to the accident. Since then, it has been recommended that rescue drills be carried out on board ships, and the coast of Vancouver Island has been equipped with better rescue equipment. Lighthouses and a rescue station were built. Interestingly, 27 years after the sinking of the Valencia, one of her lifeboats was found in good condition. This wonder boat is now in the Maritime Museum of British Columbia in Victoria. 9. Aliens on board the Mary Celeste? The Mary Celeste was a schooner brig that was found adrift in the Atlantic, midway between the Azores and Portugal in 1872. Her discovery is now one of the most famous ghost ship legends. The Mary Celeste was built in 1861 under the name Amazon, and 10 years later she was on her way from the USA to Genoa in Italy with a cargo of industrial alcohol under the name Mary Celeste. On December 4, the ship was once again sighted on the high seas by the Dea Gratia, but with no visible crew on board. Captain Briggs, his crew of 7, and the passengers were never seen again. When the ship was later taken over by the authorities, they found a faulty bilge pump, a lot of water between the decks, and a chaotic mess, but the cargo appeared intact. There were no signs of violence or piracy, and eventually a rumor spread that aliens had abducted the ship's crew and passengers. 10. Disappeared without a trace. MV Yita. The disappearance of the MV Yita is one of these stories that sounds too crazy to be true. The Yita was on voyage from Samoa to Tokelau in October 1955 with 25 people on board. 5 weeks later, she was found abandoned and partially submerged. There was no trace of the passengers or crew. The investigation revealed that the ship was traveling with only one functioning engine and that it had significant defects, including a faulty radio and a leaking cooling pipe that led to the water ingress. All of this could have been the cargo ship's undoing, but where were the people? The Yita had not sunk and showed no signs of violence. Nevertheless, the crew, some merchant travelers, and passengers were gone forever. Subscribe to the channel now and look forward to many more exciting videos.